Hello everyone, it is time for an episode of Student Affairs Live. That's right, we're back. We're back from our summer hiatus, our summer break. It's been about 47 years since we were last live on the air, it seems like, so we're back. It's really exciting. We've got a great show today, and I for one am stoked to be back on the air. I gotta tell you, it's really exciting. It's like a jolt of adrenaline, almost better than Red Bull. I'm the host of Student Affairs Live. My name is Eric Stoller. And again, folks, we are live streaming to you right now from Boston. That's right, we moved our broadcast location all the way from Columbia, South Carolina, up to Boston. So, you know, hey, we'd like to experience earthquakes a little bit. So we were up here yesterday. The floor is shaking, getting ready for the show. So, yeah, it's exciting stuff around here. Very exciting stuff. So, folks, as always, the hashtag for today's show is #SAlive. If you're following us on Twitter, checking out the action, you have questions, want to insert some stuff, create some dialogue, use that #SAlive, because we will be paying attention to that during the show, and I will be answering your questions along with my special guest today. Folks, Student Affairs Live is part of the Higher Ed Live network, higheredlive.com. That is right, we are a network of shows talking to you about Higher Ed Live, higher education topics, student affairs, all sorts of stuff. Follow us on Twitter at Higher Ed Live. Today, tweeting for the show is Ardith. She's our awesome grad student. She's going to be tweeting all sorts of awesome things that you have to say. Folks, this show would not be possible without awesome help from our sponsors. And our sponsor is Integral. They are the creators of the Schools app on Facebook. Make sure you check out the Integral webinar series about how they can help you leverage Facebook to increase yield and retention. And that happens this Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern. And we're going to send out a link via Twitter right now. So folks, great show for you today. All sorts of news to go over. As you can tell, I'm excited. I haven't even had Red Bull today, just about 36 ounces of coffee, so I'm doing well. And I really want to do a quick little introduction here of our guest, because she's been waiting patiently. She's excited. I think she's had a few Red Bulls herself. Folks, we have on the air today Marlena Love. Hey Marlena, say hi to the folks from Student Affairs Live.
Hey everybody.
And we're going to be talking with Marlena here in just a few moments about Greek life, fraternity and sorority life, all sorts of stuff in the news, so I can't wait, and I know you can't wait either. Okay, folks, time for a little section that I like to call Challenge and Support. It's my equivalent of higher education news and sort of my homage to one of my favorite student development theorists, Neville Sanford. So without further ado, we're going to break into the news here. Folks, I'm not sure if you saw this, but it's a really kind of a cool thing that just happened with Elmhurst College in Illinois. And Elmhurst, what they did is they added some language to their admissions application that lets students identify with their sexual orientation as well as gender identity in a sort of a demographic section of their admissions application. And according to the press release from Campus Pride, Elmhurst is actually the first school to implement this on their admissions application. So go ahead, check it out, check out the article. An interesting read for sure, and the commitment to diversity and social justice that Elmhurst has sort of put forward in a very public way. I applaud, so well done Elmhurst. Another news item today, and I think this is sort of interesting for folks who work in enrollment management, again for maybe folks who work in admissions, financial aid, registrar's office, or even orientation at some schools. At West Virginia, the Office of Enrollment Management and Services, they made this transition from student affairs over to academic affairs, which for those of us in student affairs, that's sort of a huge change. You know, a lot of times we think about higher education as being broken up into at least a couple of different parts, sort of student affairs and academic affairs. And enrollment management oftentimes, at least the majority of offices, is located in the student affairs division at a school. So it's an interesting transitional piece. I've talked to some of my colleagues around the country who have experienced a similar transition, and we talked about at least there's opportunities for collaboration and sort of breaking down the silos a little bit, because EM folks, enrollment management folks, have to work with both sides of the house, pretty much the entire building, right? Student affairs, academic affairs, everything in between. So interesting piece there coming out of West Virginia. Not plugging my own blog here, folks, but did want to point out that there are going to be 3 student affairs panels up for vote right now at South by Southwest. And I think it's really cool that the student affairs folks are kind of representing, trying to get their stuff out at South by Southwest, which is an interactive music, media, just audio-visual spectacular down in Austin, Texas that happens in March. And there's a lot of us that are trying to get down there, and we only get down there if we get voted in. So I know that there's a session on effective social media presence in higher ed. My good friend Ed Cabellin and Liz Gross and Deb Mao from DePaul are going to be doing that. Liz, of course, is from University of Wisconsin-Waukesha, and Ed is from Bridgewater State. Ray Junco has a session up again this year. His session's called No Fail Whale, Tweet More, Drop Out Less. He's going to be sharing some data, some information. I think it's going to be interesting at the least, so please check that one out. And then last but not least, a little plug for a session that I hope to do with Sue Beckingham from Sheffield University, Laura Pasquini from University of North Texas, and Jeff Jackson from University of Texas Health Science Center on alternative professional development. It's sort of a next step in that Alt-Pro Dev episode that I did with Jeff Jackson a little while ago here on the show about how things like Student Affairs Live can be used for professional development to supplement or in addition to sort of your more traditional or formal forms of professional development. Another piece in the news today that goes really hand in hand with today's episode. Today's episode really is about fraternity and sorority life, also known as Greek life or Greek affairs, depending on where you're at, what you do. Lots of stories right now, lots of press, lots of things coming out. This came from Princeton, that they are banning freshmen from affiliating with fraternities or sororities, which is a really big deal, and there's some severe penalties that they've even talked about for this. So interesting read coming out of Princeton, which historically has had some rather tenuous relationships with fraternity and sorority systems or chapters at Princeton. So interesting read there, especially from Princeton. Last but not least today, folks, for challenge and support for the news, major story coming out of University of South Carolina. Gamecock land is aflutter with what's going on with the fraternities down there in Columbia, because 11 of the 18 fraternities there were actually allowed now to proceed with a rush process, but again 7 are still sort of under sanction for a lot of alcohol activity that was happening with underage drinking, people having to go to the hospital, and a high percentage of folks getting into trouble there with regards to some of the rush process. So there's kind of been a back and forth going on with alumni and with current students and with the administration. So it's something obviously Marlena and I are going to get into in a little while, because it's a hot topic for sure there in Gamecock land, for sure. So folks, since it's my show, and since we're back on the air after being gone, like I said, for what feels like a really long time, I wanted to do my shout out of the week. And I wanted it to be special, and so I'm not going to put up a graphic or anything or get fancy or anything like that. The creator and impetus for all this that we do online with this show, Higher Ed Live, Seth Odell, has a new job. And Ardith is going to be tweeting out some stuff here in a second via Twitter. But Seth Odell, he is my shout out of the week, because I got to tell you, the guy created Higher Ed Live. He's got more energy than the smallest can or the largest can of Red Bull. He probably drives around the Red Bull car, actually, on the weekends. He got a new job. He's moving on from UCLA, and he's going on to Southern New Hampshire University. He's going to do web video for them, a lot of video work for them. And so he and his wife, Jillian, are making the trek across country. They've got a great little website that Ardith is going to tweet out here, kind of a fun YouTube video that Seth made. So again, folks, the unsolicited shout of the week this week goes to my man, Seth Odell, because he's a rock star. And if you don't know it, you do now, because he's awesome. So anyway, that is the shout out this week. Goes to Seth Odell. He's got like 50 episodes of Higher Ed Live under his belt. He is like a media maven. So again, follow him, learn from him. He's a rock star. All right, folks, on to the show. And I'm going to get Marlena's audio up here so she can say some things and hear her chat. So my guest today, Marlena Love, she's the Assistant Dean / Director of Fraternities, Sororities, and Independent Living Groups at MIT. She's just across the river from me, and we're going to talk about FSA, Fraternity and Sorority Affairs. Marlena, welcome to the show.
Hey, Eric, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's awesome. I'm so excited to have you on the show. You're my first guest up here in New England. We're having a wonderful day weather-wise. The earth isn't shaking.
The earth is not shaking.
And it looks like you've got some good decor in the background there. I know that you
give
went
folks a little tour.
Oh, exactly. It's like, you know, you've got a better background than Mike Severy did. I got to tell you, you've got
Mike Severy.
You've got the gator towel in the background. You got the MIT banner, the pennant. You've got that paddle there with a turtle, and I believe you went to grad school at Maryland, so you've got the connections there. You yourself are a Delta Zeta, correct?
Absolutely.
And you're wearing, I believe that looks like pink and green, so
I am
representing the colors. Nice.
Badge
Oh,
action.
very nice, very nice. Awesome, awesome. Well, folks, Marlena and I have a ton of stuff to talk about, and I think that if you have questions at all during the show, please use the hashtag. I'm putting it up again right now. We could probably talk for about 5 days about this, so we're going to try to be succinct, going to try to be concise, and we're just going to jump into it. So, I guess the big gamecock in the room, if you will, is what's happening down in Columbia. I mean, it's kind of it encapsulates sort of what you see a lot of times with the media when it comes to Greek life, and what happens with sort of promotion of things that aren't so good. So what are your thoughts about that? I think we'll kind of get into maybe the basics and sort of the introduction piece in a bit, but I really want to talk about USC so that we can move on and talk about some stuff that isn't so sordid.
Sure. Thoughts on USC? Well, provided us great material for our discussion this week. My heart goes out to the staff and administration there. I think, not knowing any of the details specifically other than what's been shared through news articles and press releases, that it sounds like the reaction is really to best benefit the students, the safety around recruitment. I would say that any fraternity sorority professional knows, that any affiliated member knows, alcohol and recruitment do not mix. If there's one rule about no alcohol, it's alcohol and recruitment should not be one and the same. And so I'm interested to learn about the students' decision-making process around that. But I really appreciate the university taking the stance that it did. I know that this was a great example of all of the members of the community being, punished or held responsible for the actions of a small representation, and I think that is clearly articulated in a number of the articles there. I'm glad to see that some of the organizations will be able to continue with recruitment, but I'm hoping that the institution can work with the undergraduates, the national headquarters, and the alumni to really figure out a healthy solution to what's going on at USC.
Absolutely, and it just seems like someone asked me earlier today sort of who I thought was at fault or to blame, and I said, it's a messy situation. There's a lot of things going on with administration, faculty, alumni,
Sure.
current students, and I was thinking that, it seems to me that we never hear about the good work that happens, right? We never hear about philanthropic efforts. We only hear about, honestly, it seems like we only hear about drinking, right? It's always alcohol.
And hazing and drug busts, unfortunately death sometimes.
Yeah, well, and I think that obviously kind of overshadows things, and I think that it's at USC. I think that what I read as sort of a non-affiliated individual is that there's a lot of power with the alumni in this type of situation, and I think that for student affairs professionals, that might be a shock to them. I don't think that a lot of student affairs folks are used to dealing with alums. We're used to dealing with current students and student
Absolutely.
organizations. And I mean, could you speak to that a little bit in terms of how that relationship differs than maybe another student, or like the band, for example? The marching band alumni aren't going to come back and have that kind of influence.
Well, there's clearly a strong identity and connection to the alumni network, to alumni who had such a positive experience as collegians, and there's still a strong connection to involvement and activities at the university level. And so I think there are many campuses who, I would say it's a pro and a con. You have incredibly involved alumni who can be on board and be helpful in advising organizations around risk management, can have the say in the chapter and the understanding of the ritual and the deep entail of the organizations. And then at the same time, sometimes campus professionals struggle, myself included, with having that educational opportunity with alumni to talk about, well, just because what you did 30 or 40 years ago isn't, we don't play by the same rules. Some of the behaviors are not accepted, and how do we work towards the intended outcome of positive student development under the guise of new rules, new language?
Oh, absolutely, especially when you almost have to do programming for the alums as well, because
Absolutely.
They're going to inject their sort of cultural norms, like you said, into the current students. And so you might be doing programming on one hand, but they're sort of doing almost informal programming on the other.
And I think we have to think about alumni integration and involving them in positive ways outside of development opportunities, outside of fundraising, outside of maintaining, if the chapter has a facility, a housing facility. I know that for some of our culturally based Greek letter organizations, the alumni experience or the post-undergraduate experience is actually incredibly meaningful and very hands-on. And so the alumni are a factor that definitely need to be considered when we're talking about how to best support students in Greek letter organizations. They can sometimes be frustrating, and we talked to them about what's going on in current day, what's going on. You know, I saw a lot of chatter on Twitter yesterday about the mindset list and what are the entering first year students experiencing, what are their life experiences. And I think having that conversation with the alumni about students are coming in with, you know, previously possibly hazing interactions, previous alcohol consumption, previous X, Y, and Z, and they're already coming into our environments, whether it's a non-residential or residential community, with those experiences. And then sometimes fraternity and sorority affiliation just exacerbates that.
Yeah, no, that's actually well said. And I was thinking too about, you've got the alumni, and you know, they joined the fraternity for a reason. And you know, current students are going through the pledge process, the rush process, for a reason. And you know, because we always hear the bad, and so I've started thinking to myself, well, if it's all bad, why does it exist? And I think we need to talk about that, because we need to talk why fraternity and sorority, you know, life, why fraternity and sorority affairs, Greek letter organizations, why are they around? You know, Princeton's trying to obviously sort of push them off campus. What's the value for folks, for students especially?
I can give you a laundry list and a bunch of websites to send you, but I think there are a lot of positives to fraternity and sorority affiliation, whether that's emotional and social support. They are social Greek letter organizations for many of them. That's the focus of the conversation today, but recognizing there are Greek organizations that are honor societies and professional societies. I think, Eric, what we're really talking here today is about those social Greek letter organizations. Many benefits to membership. So you have academic support, the upper class support from students who have been there, done that. I would hope that it would be an added supplement to help the academic environment, and so it should be supportive of the academic curriculum. And I think what we're seeing at Princeton and other locations is that the students, either the behavior or they're not able to articulate the value added, and there's some kind of incongruence between what we say we're about and what we're actually doing.
Absolutely. Well, and I, you know, as a former member of a jazz band in college, I can tell you that we learned a lot, but we also lived it up a lot. And you know, we were unlike, you know, or we were like any other organization on campus that was engaging in maybe some shenanigans. And so I think that, you know, we just didn't get the publicity, right? Because we weren't a Greek letter organization. We don't have the history. We don't have movies like Animal House about the jazz band. You know, those types of things don't exist. So I think that it's like exaggerated pop culture perpetuates a lot of this.
Well, and then we've got, I know back in my day we didn't have Facebook as a collegian. As soon as I was graduating from my senior year, Facebook became really popular. But I know that there are many a campus professional who try to navigate what to do with the, you know, YouTube, social media, Facebook in risk management education, and how do we talk to our students about the messaging that they're putting out, and then what do you do when someone sends you a Facebook picture and there's someone clearly underage wearing letters consuming alcohol. Interesting conversation on how technology has changed the way that we advise students.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's, I think especially, you know, you look at something like a USC where the students feel like they're being strong-armed, and they've completely shut down. There is no sort of educational moment that's occurring. They're no longer listening. They're feeling like they're being told what to do, and I think that, you know, right or wrong, what's going on down there sort of typifies what we have to do as professionals. Is we have to create space for learning to occur, even if we have to sort of, you know, see those things on Facebook. We're not happy with it, but no one's going to listen to us if we immediately throw the hammer down on somebody.
Absolutely. Or to say drinking underage is illegal. They're 18 to 22-year-old students, and I think one of the things when we're advising Greek letter organizations is to not share your own undergraduate experience if you are affiliated, and so not trying to relive, you know, lessons learned or best practices related to social activities, but really trying to take it from the, okay, here's what you're dealing with, here's the environment, how do I help you work through this situation. And you mentioned something about, they're just general student organizations. What makes fraternities and sororities different? And I definitely wanted to touch on the aspect of ritual. And I know we say that, you're like, ooh, what's that? And some unaffiliated members might think,
yeah,
it's secret.
That's me. Hold on. Teach me. I need to know.
There's a lot of secrecy, and I think when you can be affiliated or not affiliated and really work with Greek letter organizations, asking questions is huge. Asking students, I'd like to learn more about your organization. How do you do this? Why do you do this? In a non-confrontational way, but that you're trying to learn more. The ritual, I think, is really what separates us from any other student organization. And I say us as I am an affiliated member, but the ritual is the piece that makes us the jazz club, that makes us different from any other student organization on campus. And I think that's really important as we talk about the ritual as related to the nationally affiliated fraternities and sororities, our creeds and mottos and the words that we share during the new member initiation process, but also the ritual that we engage in every single day. There's a lot of discussion in fraternity sorority life about making sure that your actions match your words, and it's great that you espouse these values and then you go out and act like a knucklehead, but really kind of bringing that gap, closing that gap between what you say you're about, the values that you espouse, and the actions that follow up with those. So it's interesting to hear about some of the students' reactions to the judicial response or the campus response, and that they're being held to unfair standards or different standards. And as there's some great people in the field would say, you are held to a higher standard. You took an oath, you took a vow, you took a pledge to be about something better. And that's really, I would say, kind of my go-to language when we talk to students about, well, I can do this in the residence halls, I can do this in, whatever arena, but it's not okay for fraternities or sororities being held to a different standard. And you are. You don't have to be a member. You have a privilege of membership. It's also interesting to hear about the halt in recruitment and the alumni response. And I think there's a clear distinction between privilege versus right, and we need to, I think, untangle that a little bit.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I was just thinking about when you're in a fraternity or sorority, you're in a very public position. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I've been to the campus of the University of South Carolina and seen these enormous mansion-type buildings that the fraternity and sorority folks live in. And it's right smack dab in the middle of this really Absolutely. Busy street. You're there. You're on. You joined an organization, and that's what comes with it. So I think that's a really good point, though, about it's a privilege to be part of it. And one of the things too I want to talk about is I was reading what's the magazine for Delta Zeta? What's the sort of national?
The Lamp.
The Lamp, right? In the Flame, right? So I'm reading the Lamp because that's what I read. And
sure.
And I was looking through it, and there was a table about academics, and in this case, it just happened. It was Delta Zeta folk, and it was about sort of the national average for GPAs, and then there was it was here, and then there was the DZ national average for GPA, and it was much higher. And I was thinking to myself, we talk about Greek letter organizations, especially in this context, we're talking more about the social aspect. But the scholarship aspect, the academic aspect, is huge, and it's something that I don't think we talk about enough because the data doesn't lie. Yep. And the national average for folks who were part of DZ, their GPA was amazing.
Eric, I think you bring up a great point that you're drawing attention to that aspect. It's that academic excellence or scholarship is probably a common value that many of the Greek letter organizations share. There are some organizations who also publicize this information, and they will list the chapters who are below either an all men's or all women's GPA. They'll also list chapters who are below their own national standards, and I think that's important to share as well. Well, not as exciting.
Right. But you know what? You have to be real, right? You have to be as authentic as possible, and if you show that if you only show the folks who are doing really, really well, then you're kind of leaving behind folks that aren't, and then how do you support them if the only public view is the awesome stuff? So
yeah. And what's the intervention strategy? You're absolutely right. How do we bring those other chapters up?
Yeah.
It's great to be awarding the gold stars and honor roll and all that stuff, but how do we bring the whole up?
Well, and I think that that scholarship piece, when I was an academic advisor, I would see a lot of my first year students, they would participate in things like Sing, and they would just be really busy, and kind of they sort of get there's this culture almost, at least where I was at, of you kind of get disconnected from your academics a little bit because you're so busy. And I was thinking, wouldn't it be great if it was maybe, you know, that first year especially, it was more about the academics, because that's, I mean, we know that that's one of the toughest times for a student coming in.
Well, I think the new member process, although there's some arguments about pledging and the activities that take place in the new member process, it should align, in an ideal world, should align with the academic needs of a first-year student coming into college or university setting. Ideally, you've got this upper class network, this support and focus on helping this whole member, you know, building a community around this one person and wanting them to succeed and excel. And you're absolutely right. My friend Melissa Johnson at the University of Florida tweeted something about, "I'm so glad bid day is over. Now I can encourage, hopefully students will be encouraged to come to class." And that is almost hurtful to hear, but that is the reality. You know, the number of faculty members who contact staff in our office to say, students were told not to come to their advising appointments because they were told by their XYZ organization that they had to participate in recruitment, and miss advising appointments with their faculty. Incredibly frustrating when we say academic excellence is one of the values that we espouse. Clearly a disconnect there.
What I was thinking, you know, because everyone likes to polarize things and sort of, you know, look at one side or the other, and I was thinking, as an academic advisor, I kept thinking to myself, I'm not doing my job as well as I should be, because, you know what, if they're not coming to me, I need to come to them. You know, I think that, you know, as we've been talking, as we've sort of been doing some show prep, I was thinking, I never did programming in any of the Greek houses. Why not? I totally should have. I think I had sort of this, maybe a stigma or some sort of, you know, stereotype in my head that I wasn't welcome. But I think that would have been the complete opposite, you know. And I think that programming needs to go into the houses. I think that a lot of folks, especially unaffiliated folks, you know, when you go through an undergraduate experience, you know, and if you don't have friends who are in fraternities or sororities, you might not hang out as much with folks in Greek life. And I think that, you know, I think that then sort of takes you into your professional career, that mentality, that mindset sometimes. And I know for me, I really want to challenge folks, and you know, you and I have talked about this, get out there and do more programs, because the students where I was at, they could have used that. That, you know, if they're being told to, you know, miss your appointment, or, you know, don't go to class, well, guess what? Let's go to them and let's get in there and get in their face and say, hey, we can do both, because we have to.
Absolutely. I really appreciate your openness to, you know, at least recognizing at the time you could have done more, but the openness to exploring that. And I think one of the negative aspects, at least the perceptions about fraternities and sororities, is that they are exclusionary, or that they're not welcoming to outsiders. The caveat there is not every organization is the same. The Delta Zetas at the University of Florida are not the same as those at Northeastern University, but that there is a common thread and a common bond. And so as a non-affiliated person, trying to use some of that language around community, sisterhood, brotherhood, why are those values important to you? I think you can make a connection. I definitely echo your call to action for campus professionals with resources, whether it's academic advising, mental health, time management, reaching out to those wellness professionals and seeing how you can collaborate, because a lot of times, you know, you're hearing the same voices over and over again, different messages, but same voices from the fraternity and sorority affairs professionals. The students kind of check out. And so one of the things that I really like that we have here at MIT is that we have a mental health liaison through our mental health offices on campus that's assigned to each fraternity and sorority and our independent living group. So those students know they have a specific contact, for good or bad, doing a check-in, programming opportunities, a specific staff member that they have their name and number that they can contact. And we share that to all the undergraduates.
So, Marlena, we've been throwing around some different terminology.
Yeah.
And I've been trying, at least on Twitter, to tweet this show topic as Fraternity and Sorority Life, or Fraternity and Sorority Affairs. And I think I squeezed in a couple, you know, Greek Life, Greek Affairs, because I think sometimes folks don't necessarily know what Fraternity, Sorority Life, or FSA or FSL is. Can you talk about that? What's going on? Sort of, what are some of the shifts when it comes to just sort of semantics when it comes to Greek life these days?
Sure. I think just as any kind of language, it's really hard to make change. And so you're still going to hear people call residence halls dormitories, and some campuses call them dorms, so that's even more confusing because you have to unlearn all your good student affairs language. But what we're seeing in the fraternity and sorority world is that campus professionals and international headquarters staff members are trying to use more inclusive language. around fraternity and sorority life or fraternity and sorority affairs or social Greek letter organizations, and that being Greek or Greeks in general as a name for a student population is not quite right, especially as we talk about ethnic or cultural connotations around people who are actually from Greece. And so it might seem silly and it might seem just a play on semantics, but we're really trying to use more language that is inclusive of all of our cultural and ethnic identities, as well as things that are more tied directly to Greek letter organizations.
Yeah.
So it is challenging. I know that there's a hashtag for FSL. It's not fraternity and sorority life. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, so we'll be careful about hashtag abuse. Yeah.
Still, I think Greek chat and Greek life are still popular hashtags, but I think you'll see across college campuses, the offices or departments or staff members working in those places is moving from Greek affairs or Greek life to fraternity sorority affairs or fraternity sorority life. Okay. It is popular. I'm not saying it's massive across the country, but we are slowly shifting that way.
Well, I think just sort of articulating it as you just did is important for folks. I think that if it just changes and there's no articulation of why, then folks are gonna sort of wonder what just happened. Feel like they've got the rug pulled out from underneath them, that type of thing. And you're dealing with sort of the historical context of massive amounts of alums all over the world who were brought up in a system that they called Greek life.
Absolutely.
And being Greek. And so I think that it's a massive sort of cultural shift that will take time and lots of education.
And I don't think there's the negative connotation like the four-letter F word that I refer to for fraternities. And then some people say, well, we're going to reclaim that. And I said, you go ahead and do that. But there's a negative connotation around when you're calling students girls and boys, frat boys and sorority girls, to calling them men and women, to calling them students. So we're setting a language expectation that you're going to act like an adult, you're going to act like a man, you're going to act like a woman. Again, understanding social identities around what men and women are, but not calling them boys and girls, especially around the new member either intake process or new member recruitment process, not calling them babies.
I saw that in the news, and I thought, 18-year-old women calling each other babies. I mean, infantilizing each other. And I wanted to point out that Matt Deeg, who, by the way, has just been tweeting up a storm the entire show, he said, and I thought it was a really good sort of tweet here, was Greek life equals, quote, animal house, while fraternity/sorority life equals values, ritual, and integrity. So I thought that was sort of
Thank you, Matt Deeg.
I thought that was a
Matt
good distinction.
just started a new position at UNF at Jacksonville, Florida.
Oh, nice.
So join the community.
Awesome.
But that's a great terminology to try to understand where we're getting to.
Well, and I think that it just needs to be seen over and over again. I mean, there's a lot of functional area texts that are out there that will have to be rewritten and edited, etc. And folks coming up in student affairs grad programs, and there's a lot of learning to occur and take place for sure. And I think that one of the things that we haven't touched upon yet is that some other folks are tweeting about that they don't like being called babies either.
Thank you.
I think that a lot of times you'll have this language that is set to that does more damage in the end, and I think that changing language is really it's a really strong way to influence people.
Absolutely. Even
in very sort of subtle ways. And one of the things I wanted to touch on, and we haven't yet really, is the philanthropy. Every time I see something like a USC or a Princeton or, was it the VP of Student Affairs at Cornell that came out with an article today? Let me just check here.
Asking to end pledging.
Exactly. Everybody's writing something right now, it seems like, about fraternity and sorority life. But every time you see it, you see sort of the counter to the negative is one of the aspects that sort of is the benefit is all the philanthropic efforts that those in the community bring to the table, and it seems like there's such a storied history there, and we don't talk about it enough.
Yeah, I think the positive contributions, especially around philanthropic efforts, are undeniable. I think sometimes we use it as a crutch or an excuse, saying, oh, well, we're going to raise some money, or we had a number of people participate in Relay for Life. I think as campus-based professionals, we're really trying to gear students towards identifying, is there a cause or an effort that is personal to your organization? While many national organizations have identified a specific philanthropy, is there something that the members of the organization can commit to that really resonates with them, so it's more meaningful than just raising a bunch of money? And also, what is being done with that money? How are you actually giving back? And then can you pair it with some kind of actual community service and making the distinction between philanthropy and community service? So you're absolutely right in that the philanthropy piece is often overlooked, but I also feel like it is used as a crutch or an argument.
Yeah, because it's sort of like the go-to. And I think that, everyone likes to have a very polarized story. I mean, I go back to this all the time. We live in the gray. The gray is messy. It's not black and white, right or wrong. There's a lot of sort of in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the more we start talking about that and using that type of language, it builds bridges so that we can communicate with one another and we can have empathy for one another's situations, and more listening will occur. I mean, the articles you see right now, they're not about empathy or listening. They're about, being told no, or being told you're taking something away from me.
Yeah. And I think as we talk about the philanthropy piece, so many of our organizations have activities around the philanthropies that I think could be questionable, whether it is a performance-based philanthropy, where you're asking specifically new member classes to participate, wear scandalous clothing, engage in activities that you probably wouldn't do in front of your mother, father, definitely not grandma, grandpa. And then we also, in some campuses, not all campuses, but there is an alcohol aspect to either pre-gaming or post-gaming before or after the philanthropic activity or effort. So I see skit nights, dance activities, and so how do we get to that outcome of positive philanthropy and service, at the same time try to take all those detractions away from those core activities?
Yeah. Well, it's like when I used to do a lot of student conduct work as well, and whenever I hear the word barn dance, I think conduct sanctions, because that's what I equate it to, because it's like there's a lot going on at those barn dances. And so I think that
absolutely
it's sort of like taking away the veil and just stripping things out and sort of saying, hey, here's what's going on, being extremely honest with it. And one of the things too that I want to point out, that Don B. White sent a tweet out about how he went through the undergraduate process viewing Greek life as buying friends. And I would say that when I was 20 years old, because I transferred in from a community college, so when I went to university that had fraternities, some of my friends were in fraternities. They'd been there for a couple years before me, and they came to me and said, hey, you want to join up, you want to pledge, rush? And I said, no, I'm poor kid from rural Iowa, money was tight anyway, I've got friends, I'm good. I mean, I think that's a stereotype that a lot of people encounter, and I would just sort of say, you work with students who are members, who are going through the process, who have lots of questions. What would you say to that?
Some groups can be expensive, and I would hope that the finances would not be a barrier to entry for potential new members considering to affiliate or not. To be honest, I think there are a number of campuses where the fraternity sorority experience is non-residential, and so you wouldn't have a house bill or additional fees. I do say for many organizations, the new member experience is a little pricey in that you're paying for regalia, pins, lifetime membership, and so with those items comes an associated cost. I do know that many organizations are willing to work with individual students to figure out payment plans and opportunities that are more cost efficient, but there is sometimes a financial cost to membership, absolutely. And this varies from organization to organization, campus to campus, historical, cultural organizations. Again, there's not a one-size-fits-all model, but I would say there are reasons why stereotypes exist sometimes, and sometimes we have organizations that perpetuate those stereotypes.
Yeah.
So if your membership fees include t-shirts and bonfires and weekend trips to wherever it is that you're going, you might want to question about where those dollars are going.
Exactly. I think that's a really good point. There's a great question, and I'm going to destroy someone's name on Twitter here. That's the one thing when you're a host, is you just get to blurt out names and keep going. Chris, is it Chris Bylone? I'll just say it phonetically.
Yes.
He says, how do younger pros gain Greek life office experience if they're not affiliated, so that if then a part of their job has to do with fraternity and sorority life or fraternity and sorority affairs, what do they go about doing? How do they do that if they haven't sort of been brought up in the system themselves?
That's a great question. Chris, thanks for asking. I think there are a number of resources out there for student life professionals or student affairs professionals interested in fraternities and sororities, or that you might have a piece of your portfolio will be responsible for advising fraternities and sororities. Both NASPA and ACPA have specific functional areas that focus on providing resources to campus professionals working with Greek letter organizations. I know the Commission for Student Involvement for ACPA, part of their core focus is to provide resources to fraternity and sorority life professionals, as well as the NASPA knowledge community on fraternity and sorority life.
Nice. And you're involved with the CSI, right?
Shameless plug for the Commission for Student Involvement, yes.
No, that's okay.
I think it's helpful for student affairs professionals who are more generalist in nature to not think of their professional development as the one-stop conference or convention experience, but to bite the bullet and invest the money into a professional membership if you or your host organization can support that, because then you're open to reduced costs of webinars, electronic resources, some of the periodicals coming out of ACPA and NASPA and the Association of Fraternity and Sorority Advisors, specifically focusing on fraternity and sorority life, I would say is well worth the membership, even if you can't attend one of the in-person conference experiences that happen every year.
Oh, and by the way, folks are now sharing on Twitter right now how you can gain experience.
Yes.
And Kristen Rupert says, hey, offer to volunteer on campus. Small things at first, get involved, get experience. And my sort of take on it is this: for any sort of in-group situation where you're kind of coming in from the outside, take your time. You're going to do a lot more listening and learning at first. If you go in there and think you're going to know everything, then it's not going to happen. You're not going to be able to build bridges, establish trust, the same kind of things that we do with any other student organization.
And I think too, for graduate students, doing an internship or practicum in an area of fraternity sorority life, even if that's not your core focus, that an aspect of functional unit that you're dedicated to or you think you're going to enter the job market in, but having that experience will really expand your portfolio. I'd also say volunteering, like you said, Eric, but helping, collaborating on presenting and facilitation. So if there's a fraternity sorority specific opportunity on your campus, or there's a staff or department there, reaching out to them and say, I've got this experience in program presentation on these various topics. How can I help support your organizations? I think that would be a fantastic start to make those relationships.
Well, I keep thinking about this model in my head about campus relationships with, FSA and student affairs in general, and I keep thinking, well, a lot of times we have the Office of Greek Life or the Office of Fraternity and Sorority Affairs. Maybe there's one person in that office, two people, three people, and it's like a funnel, right? If you got this massive organization down here whose only interaction with student affairs is sort of this one person up here, and then if that gets cut off or broken, communication breaks down, then all of student affairs kind of loses access.
Another opportunity, just something you said triggered me. Many organizations have a chapter advisor, faculty or staff advisors, and so I think it's a great opportunity to have a new face or new resources engaging with the organizations as a staff member or volunteer to be an advisor role there.
Oh, absolutely. I think that it's easy to do, and when I was at Oregon State, a lot of student affairs practitioners were advisors. They would go to sort of like the Monday evening dinners and just hang out and get to know folks. I think that that's such a huge part of this.
Absolutely.
And I think it kind of demystifies things too, because the words, the phrasing, things like ritual, the things that happen during the pledge process, the rush process, and I'm probably not even using the proper language. We need fraternity and sorority life for dummies, or for the unaffiliated, right?
Yeah, I think it's called Wikipedia. No, I'm just kidding.
Thanks. Oh, and that is a slam. Good. That's nice. We're 45 minutes in, folks, and I just got burned. It's good.
Just kidding.
No, that was awesome. That was really awesome. Jeff Jackson is sharing that he volunteered for several different Greek life events at the University of Arizona, and that he's also doing a keynote for the Greek community at Texas State. So, and there again is the Commission for Student Involvement from ACPA tweeting away. So, they're excited that You're the chair, apparently. You didn't mention that. Yeah, you're kind of a big deal.
Uh, no.
Oh, it's good.
You're making me blush now. I'm a little
That's
embarrassed.
okay. These cameras are high definition, so we can see everything.
Excellent.
Hey, no worries. So, folks, I'm here with Marlena Love. She works in fraternity and sorority life at MIT. Tweet your questions, your comments to hashtag SAlive, and we're going to try to get to them. We've got about 15 more minutes to go here on the show. One of the things that we talked about on our pre-show, as we were pre-gaming it, drinking coffee and water, was about the sort of organizational structures that exist now with different fraternities and sororities versus when they originated, in terms of some of the there's like organizations that didn't exist in, like, when was the first fraternity established?
Someone's probably going to correct me. I think it was 1775 or 1776.
A while ago,
Phi
right?
Beta Kappa. Yeah. Well, it's a great introduction to the Baird's Manual of college fraternities in America.
Nice.
But yeah, long history of Greek letter organizations in America.
Well, and I hear all these terms like Pan-Hellenic and IFC, and there's multicultural fraternities and sororities. And could you talk about that in terms of, I sense tension, and I don't know enough about it other than I can sense it, but could you articulate that a little bit?
Tension in the structures. I can give you a brief overview that will not be fully exhaustive of some of the umbrella organizations that exist. We have the National Pan-Hellenic Conference, the NPC, oversees governance and policy, outlines rules and regulations, and really tries to provide a structure to the historically, I'll use the word white here, historically white social organizations, and serves as a governing board. And then we have the NIC that provides resources, best practices, and expectations, but my understanding, to be clear, is not a governing board for some of the more traditional men's fraternities on campus. Then we've got the NPHC. It's a National Pan-Hellenic Conference for our historically Black Greek letter organizations, provides support and resources, as well as kind of bringing the community together on outlining expectations around pledging, intake, new member education, like NPC and NIC from a more global perspective. We've got NALFO that exists to support the Latino-Latina fraternities and sororities on our campuses across the country. I'm going to look at my cheat sheet because I know we've got lots of other ones. NAPA is a growing organization focusing on Asian Greek letter organizations, the National Multicultural Greek Councils. You name it, we've probably got a council for it. We also see on many campuses South Asian, Southeast Asian, and African fraternities and sororities popping up, and trying to make sure that we've got some structural support there from a national or international level to help provide some basic either ground rules or structure around kind of communication and education and curriculum for all of our groups on campus. So I just blot a whole language out at you, but it's basically we've got, for nationally affiliated organizations, umbrella groups that member organizations subscribe to. So they could be international or national. We've also got some campuses who recognize local organizations, which means that they are specific to that campus or that geographic location, but there's not a chapter or an organization at the undergraduate or graduate level anywhere else. Again, different, unique model.
Well, and Ardith just tweeted out from Hired Live a whole bunch of acronyms, and unfortunately I'm not wearing my acronym decoder ring, but I'll have to go back and Google all of them later.
And again, there's a ton of information out there, so I want to put out there that I haven't covered all of the pieces, but we've got these national governing councils or advocacy groups. They're doing some policy work advocating for fraternities and sororities on Capitol Hill, whether it's around housing, affiliation, supporting rights and responsibilities for our Greek letter organizations on campuses. Then we've got our national organizations. So we've got umbrella group and then the individual international organizations who I call it a franchise model. If you got a McDonald's at OSC, you might have a McDonald's other campuses that you're subscribing to a set curriculum, values, language, ritual, and that ideally would be similar from campus to campus or from franchise to franchise, knowing that each campus has a different history as well as a different take on how they might interpret that on their own local campuses.
So, see, I think folks should really be getting some sort of like continuing education credit for this, because
Sure.
you're dropping a tremendous amount of knowledge, and I know that I'm appreciative, and I'm sure the folks watching are as well. What's some of the stuff that's happening now? Sort of what's the future? Like where do we go from here? What's it going to look like 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now?
My hope would be that our organizations still exist on campus. That is my hope. I think the reality is that there are many campuses across the country asking whether or not we're worth it. Are fraternities and sororities worth the pain, the hassle, the insurance, the lawsuits? And I think campus professionals and international headquarters can help assist in articulating and proving to campuses that we are worth it. In 10 or 15 years, that's a great question. I think we're actually seeing a number of national organizations focusing not only on new member education, but holistic member education. So you don't have to know everything there is to know about the organization or about yourself in 8 weeks or 10 weeks. But we're really focusing on a membership education model that reaches all aspects of the undergraduate curriculum, as well as trying to engage alumni in more meaningful ways. We're seeing some organizations focus their membership development on student development theory. And so I'm going to give a shout out to Lambda Chi Alpha Fraternity and their True Brother model. Check out their website. There's some great stuff going on. They did present at NASPA and ACPA, not this past year, but the previous year, on the outcomes around that program. And they delve into a number of aspects of social identity, community building, ethical decision making. And for student affairs folks, we get really excited about, oh my gosh, someone's speaking my language. I think some of the national organizations are realizing they need to make a stronger connection to student development. We're also seeing fraternities and sororities pop up outside of North America. There are some campuses, or excuse me, there's some chapters popping up in the Caribbean, in where else? England, all over the place. And so we're trying to figure out, how does that experience translate across an ocean?
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, or what if you're in Greece? I mean, it's going to be really interesting then. We have like, you know, the Roman alphabet or something as your letters. I don't know. So
I'm also seeing, Eric, around the service piece of fraternity and sorority, giving back to the community. There are a number of organizations and campuses focusing on Greek letter organization specific service and global immersion trips. And so I think that's something that's going to become more popular probably in the next 5 to 10 years.
When I saw a tweet from, I think it was NAFSA, talking about, you know, students going abroad, and I think that ties into what you just mentioned, is that, you know, very few students go abroad, sort of get outside of their bubble. Mm-hmm. And I think that whenever you're in an organization that is so tight-knit, as it can be if you're in a fraternity or sorority, going abroad, getting outside of that sort of comfort zone is so important to development.
I know Delta Upsilon Fraternity is doing a global service initiative, and so not only are the undergraduate chapters raising money towards a cause or philanthropic effort, but then if you reach a certain amount, and I have to go back to their website and check it out, if you reach a certain amount, you can actually send a member from your chapter to the service site and actually help build the school, the wall, the buildings that the money is actually contributing to. And talk about putting your money where your mouth is. That's not your average spring break, I have to say, for most undergraduates.
Right. Well, and spring break, there's just so many stereotypical connotations for that as well. So, you know, as we sort of wrap up here, I wanted to ask you the question that I always ask everyone on the show. Mm-hmm. And we always do a pre-show Google Doc, and I must say that Marlena was probably one of the more diligent people about filling it out with all sorts of bits of information. And so the question is, you know, what are your top 5 favorite websites, books, and or conferences for professional development purposes?
Excellent. Well, I'm thinking more in the lens of fraternity sorority affairs professionals. I have to say I learned a lot from Twitter. I am giving a plug to Twitter, but you don't have to be Twitter savvy to participate and learn and engage. And I found a number of interesting or helpful related links, resources, things that are going on at other campuses that impact the work that I do, that have raised my level of awareness around what the conversation is nationally and how that might have a ripple effect on me here at MIT. So give a shout out to Twitter. There are a number of student affairs professionals who are fantastic using Twitter and other social media. There are I think there's a PDF list of different student affairs specific hashtags and how do you engage in conversation, even if you're long distance or on other sides of the country or other sides of the world. So shout out to Twitter. The Association of Fraternity and Sorority Advisors, I think, has been a great experience for me as a member to learn, to engage, to volunteer, to do more around being a fraternity and sorority affairs professional, but also I think a better student affairs professional. They do have an annual meeting in December, but like many organizations, I'm looking to engage members outside of that 1 year experience and opportunity. And there's great ways to get involved, fantastic resources. IFI is the Interfraternity Institute, is an opportunity that I was able to participate in as a first year fraternity and sorority professional. So my first year on the job, I'd spent one academic year, I went to this experience, and it was for headquarters staff and campus-based professionals. Really challenged all my notions about what I thought fraternity and sorority was about, even being an affiliated member, what it was like to work with Greek letter organizations, and how we can articulately challenge some of the misconceptions or common used defenses, both at the undergraduate level and at the alumni level, why we do the things that we do. I'm trying to think of what else. I have to give for a web reference, fraternalthoughts.blogspot.com is a blog run by John Schertzer. Very thoughtful, both on the personal reflection piece, and we talk about ethical decision making and integrity, as well as why are organizations doing the things that they've always been done, and how can we help challenge that. And then last but not least, I have to say a personal, professional crush of mine, and I'm getting a little bit embarrassed again. Both Mike McCree and Dan Bureau, folks that you can find on Twitter and Facebook, have authored some pretty eye-opening and thought-provoking articles, as well as just commentary, whether it's on Facebook, Twitter, or in Perspectives, which is one of the periodicals published by the Association of Fraternity and Sorority Advisors, on why we should close more chapters. Probably counterintuitive. You should look that one up. I highly encourage people to read it just as a different piece of information, as well as how do we acknowledge what's going on inside the organization when we're too busy trying to focus on some of the other things outside. So those are my promos of the week for fraternity and sorority professionals. Has helped really guide and educate me as a campus-based professional.
Oh, awesome. Well, I think that what you've done, at least for me, is you really clearly articulated several things that I either had in my head as sort of a stereotype or some sort of a misnomer, and so for me, it really did demystify a lot of things. So I really appreciate that, and I think that this show it should be required watching because you've given so much knowledge, and I really appreciate you coming on the show. It's such a nice day outside. You could be out kayaking the river or something.
Oh, I wish.
So I know you're getting. When does school start for you all?
We start September 7th, so after Labor Day, but we're about to kick off fraternity and sorority recruitment September 3rd.
Okay, well, I hope it goes smoothly and that you have a great time with it. And again, Marlena, you are welcome to come on the show anytime. Because
thank you so much. And I'm just eager to share the information that's been shared with me. You don't pop out of undergrad or graduate experience knowing some of these things, and it's all been through the experiences that I've had, the people that I met, and the great colleagues who are able to help educate you and mold you along the way. So I'm happy to share back.
Hear, hear. Thanks for that. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks. So,
folks, thanks for watching. Obviously, we could have talked for a very long time. I have lots of questions, sort of bumbling that I do on the show. It's our first one back, so we've been gone for a while. So we're getting a little, getting the kinks worked out, blowing the rust out of the pipes, whatever. So anyway, we have a show next week. I just found out. So next week, we've got a great show lined up. And we're going to bring back someone we've had on the show previously. Jeff Lale is going to come back on the show, and he's going to talk about collegiate athletics. Because what is going on right now in this country when it comes to Division I athletics, especially with college football, and what is the impact and what is sort of the ramifications for student affairs folks? So next week, Jeff Lale is going to come on. He's going to talk about his new EDU sports show. And once again, folks, I got to really give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Integral, because they're just amazing. Again, folks, we're sponsored by Integral. They're the creators of the Schools app on Facebook. Please make sure to check out their webinar series about how they can help you leverage Facebook to increase yield and retention. And that happens this Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern, and we're going to send out a tweet with that link right now because let me tell you, there's some cool stuff happening with Facebook and some research and all sorts of neat things with involvement and engagement. So anyway, folks, this is Student Affairs Live. My name is Eric Stoller, and we will see you next week.